The sky of Dareth 9 was always dark, covered in smoke from years of war. Lieutenant James Hale adjusted the strap of his medical bag as he stepped out of the field tent. The air smelled of metal and burned stone. He had been on this planet for 6 months, patching up soldiers, civilians, and sometimes even enemies. James was different from the other soldiers. While many of them were tired of the endless war, James still believed in saving lives no matter which side they were on. That was why everyone called him the stubborn medic. This morning was quiet. Too quiet. The ceasefire between the two factions had held for 3 days, but James knew it could break at any time. He grabbed his scanner and started his patrol near the ruined city outskirts. The city had once been beautiful. The tall alien towers were now broken in half and the streets were filled with dust. James walked carefully, scanning for life signs. Suddenly, his scanner beeped. A faint signal. Very faint. He followed it into a collapsed building. Inside, he found something he did not expect. A small alien girl no older than 8. Her skin was pale blue and her large golden eyes stared at him with fear. She was an Ithari, one of the native species of Dareth 9. James slowly removed his helmet and knelt down so he would not scare her. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help," he said gently. The girl did not speak but trembled in the corner. James noticed she had a cut on her leg and dirt all over her small hands. She had probably been hiding here for days. He opened his medical bag and carefully cleaned the wound, speaking softly as he worked. The girl flinched at first, but when she felt the cool medicine on her leg, she stayed still. "There we go. See? Not so bad," James said with a small smile. After bandaging her, he offered her a water pack. She hesitated, then drank quickly, almost finishing it in one go. James realized how hungry and thirsty she must have been. When he finished treating her, James reported in through his communicator. "Command, this is Lieutenant Hale. I found a lone Ithari child in Sector 6. Requesting permission to bring her in." Static buzzed before the reply came. "Negative, Lieutenant. We are not authorized to take in civilians from neutral species. Leave the child and return to base." James frowned. "Command, she's just a child. She won't survive out here. Orders are clear. Return to base. Command out." The line went dead. James stood there for a moment, angry. He looked at the small girl who was watching him silently, not understanding the words but feeling the tension. He sighed. "All right, kid. Looks like it's just you and me," he said softly. James decided to keep her hidden. Each night he sneaked out extra food packs from the supply room. He visited the ruins after his shifts, bringing her meals and keeping her company. She never spoke, but she listened carefully when he talked about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests far away from this dusty planet. Slowly, the girl started to trust him. One evening when James arrived, she smiled for the first time. He almost laughed. It was the first smile he had seen in months. For the next few days, things seemed calm. The ceasefire held, and James started planning how he could smuggle her to a safer settlement far from the front line. But peace never lasted on Dareth 9. On the 4th night, the base alarms went off. A red light flashed over the camp. "All units, incoming artillery. Enemy breach detected," the loudspeaker shouted. James's heart raced. Without wasting a second, he grabbed his gear and ran straight to the ruins. He had to get the girl before the attack reached her hiding place. Explosions echoed in the distance as he sprinted through the broken streets. Dust fell from cracked buildings as shells hit nearby. When he reached the building, the girl was already waiting near the door, frightened by the noise. She ran to him as soon as she saw him. "Easy, kid. We have to move. Now," James said, picking her up in his arms. He carried her through the ruins, heading toward an old trench that could lead them closer to the human base. The ground shook with every explosion and the sky lit up with fire. They had just reached the trench when the sound of a whistling shell filled the air, louder, closer. James knew that sound well. "Down!" he shouted. A shrapnel bomb exploded nearby, throwing metal fragments everywhere. James turned his back to shield the girl, feeling the sharp pain as pieces tore into his armor and flesh. He fell to the ground, gasping, but kept his arms around the child. She was safe. That was all that mattered. Through the ringing in his ears, James forced himself to stand. He was bleeding, but he could not stop. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward a half-broken bunker nearby. They stumbled inside just as another shell landed outside. The blast shook the walls, but the bunker held. James collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. His armor was damaged and blood was dripping down his side. The girl looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "It's okay," he said weakly, forcing a smile. "We're safe for now." Outside, the sounds of battle continued. Inside the bunker, the air was filled with silence and fear. James knew one thing: this was only the beginning. The bunker was dark, lit only by a small emergency lamp James had found in a corner. His breathing was rough, and every movement sent pain through his chest. The shrapnel had cut deep, and his left arm felt numb. The little Ithari girl sat close to him, clutching his sleeve with her small hand. Her golden eyes were full of worry. She still did not speak much, but James could feel her fear. "Don't worry," he whispered, forcing a calm voice despite the pain. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you." He tore open a small medical kit and began patching himself up as best as he could. His hands shook as he removed metal shards from his side. Each one burned like fire, but he gritted his teeth and kept going. He had done this for soldiers before, but doing it on himself was harder. The girl noticed his struggle. She looked around, found a bottle of water, and brought it to him. James gave her a tired smile. "Thanks, kid. Good thinking," he said, taking a sip before sealing the bottle. Outside, the battle raged. The sound of distant guns and falling shells made the ground tremble. James knew enemy troops might sweep the area soon. If they found the bunker, there would be no mercy. He checked his communicator. The signal was weak, but he tried anyway. "This is Lieutenant Hale. I am in Sector 6, Bunker 3. I have a civilian with me." "Request immediate evac," he said. Only static answered him. James cursed under his breath, but kept his face calm for the girl's sake. "Looks like we're on our own for now," he said. Hours passed. The noise outside began to fade. James could hear his own heartbeat louder than the distant gunfire. The girl had fallen asleep next to him, her head resting against his arm. James stayed awake, guarding her like a shield. Every time he started to drift off, pain woke him again. His wounds were still bleeding and fever was starting to creep in. He knew he needed proper medical attention soon, but leaving the bunker now would mean running into enemy scouts. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. James froze, his heart racing. He picked up his rifle with his good arm and aimed at the door. The girl woke up, sensing the danger. She stayed very still, watching James. The footsteps grew louder. Then came a voice, and not human. It was guttural and sharp, the language of the enemy. James held his breath. The enemy soldiers were right outside. If they opened the bunker door, it would be over. The girl suddenly crawled over and pressed her tiny hands on James's wound, as if trying to comfort him. Her golden eyes met his, silently telling him to stay strong. Minutes passed. The footsteps moved away. The enemy must have missed the bunker in the dark. James finally let out the breath he had been holding. "Good girl," he whispered, lowering the rifle. But he knew they would come back during daylight. They had to move before dawn. He gathered his strength and stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but he pushed forward. "All right, kid, time to go. We can't stay here any longer," he said. The girl nodded. She seemed to understand more now. James guessed she had been listening carefully every time he spoke. He helped her climb out of the bunker. The night air was cold, and smoke covered the sky like a dark blanket. They moved carefully through the ruins, staying low to avoid being seen. Every step was hard for James. His side burned, and blood soaked his bandage. But he kept going, one step at a time. When they reached the trench, James stopped and rested against the wall. His vision was starting to blur. He took out a small flare gun. If he could fire it into the sky, maybe his team would see it. He loaded the flare and shot it high above. A red light bloomed in the night sky, falling slowly like a star. For a long moment there was silence. Then, in the distance, he heard a reply, a coded signal from a friendly patrol. Relief washed over him. He looked at the girl and smiled. "Help is coming," he said, but their danger was not over yet. The flare had also alerted enemy scouts. Shadows moved at the edge of the ruins. James grabbed his rifle again and crouched in front of the girl. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The first enemy appeared. James fired, hitting the soldier and forcing the others to take cover. Pain shot through his side with every movement, but he kept firing until the magazine was empty. Then he heard shouting. Human voices this time. His squad was here. Blue light beams cut through the night as friendly soldiers engaged the enemy. Lieutenant Hale, hold your position, someone shouted. James let out a tired laugh. He lowered his rifle and sank to the ground. The girl ran to him and held his hand tightly. When the shooting stopped, his squad reached them. Sergeant Cole, his friend, knelt beside him. James, you crazy medic.
You're full of holes,
Cole said, quickly checking his wounds. Yeah, but she's safe, James said with a weak smile, looking at the girl. Cole nodded. Let's get you both out of here. They carried James to a transport vehicle. The girl refused to leave his side, holding his hand the entire way. As they lifted off toward the base, James looked at the battlefield one last time. The night was still burning with distant explosions, but he felt strangely calm. He had protected her. That was all that mattered. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. James Hale lay on the bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, his left arm in a sling. He had been unconscious for 2 days after the evacuation, but now his eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. The door hissed open, and Sergeant Cole walked in, carrying a tray of food. Behind him was the small Ithari girl, her golden eyes wide with relief when she saw James awake. Well, look who's finally alive, Cole said with a grin. You had half the base worried, James. James gave a tired smile. I'm not that easy to kill. His voice was rough, but he meant it. The girl ran to his bedside and placed her hand gently on his arm. James could see she had been cleaned up. No more dirt on her face, and she wore a simple cloth robe provided by the base. She stayed here the whole time, Cole said. Wouldn't let anyone move her too far from you. James looked at her and smiled softly. Good job, kid. You're safe now. For the next few days, James focused on healing. The shrapnel wounds were deep, but the medics said he would recover. Every day, the girl came to sit by his bed, listening quietly as he told stories of Earth. One morning, she surprised him. James, she said softly in broken human language. Thank you. James blinked. It was the first time she had spoken clearly to him. You can talk, he said, smiling. That's amazing. The girl nodded. You will protect me. You are my protector. The words warmed James's heart more than any medicine could. When James was finally strong enough to walk, the commander called him to a briefing room. The Ithari girl stood beside him, refusing to leave his side. Inside, the commander and several officers were waiting. On the screen behind them was an image of several Ithari elders, their faces calm but serious. Lieutenant Hale, the commander began, your actions have reached the Ithari Council. They know what you did to save this child, even when it was not part of your orders. James stood straighter. Sir, I couldn't just leave her. She's innocent, the commander nodded. And because of that choice, the Ithari have agreed to meet with our diplomats. They believe your compassion is proof that humans can be trusted as allies. James was silent for a moment, then smiled faintly. That's good news, sir. It's more than good news, the commander said. It might end this war sooner than we thought. James looked down at the little girl. She was smiling too, as if she understood how important this was. Weeks passed and the ceasefire held. The fighting stopped completely as humans and Ithari worked on a peace treaty. James was finally released from the medical bay, though his scars would never fully heal. His unit threw a small celebration for him, cheering as he entered the mess hall for the first time. But the biggest surprise came a month later. The Ithari Council invited James to their great hall, deep within their crystal cities, to witness the signing of the peace agreement. James traveled there with a group of diplomats and soldiers. When he stepped into the hall, he was amazed. The walls glowed with soft light, and strange symbols floated in the air, marking this as a sacred place. At the center of the hall, the little Ithari girl stood dressed in ceremonial clothing. She had been chosen as a symbol of peace, the living proof that two different species could care for each other. When she saw James, she ran to him and hugged him tightly. James, she said, smiling brightly, you came. Of course I did, he said, kneeling to meet her eyes. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The Ithari elders approached. One of them spoke in a calm, deep voice. Human Hale, you risked your life for one of ours. Because of you, we choose peace. Today we honor you. A glowing crystal medallion was placed around James's neck, the highest honor the Ithari could give to a non-Ithari. James felt humbled. I just did what any medic should do, he said softly. The elder nodded. And that is why it means so much. The ceremony began. Humans and Athari representatives signed the treaty, promising to work together. Cheers echoed through the hall as the two banners, human and Athari, were raised side by side. James stood quietly, watching history being made. The little girl stood beside him, holding his hand. After the ceremony, she spoke again. "James, I will learn many things. I will speak for my people one day. I will tell them about you," James smiled. "I know you will, and I'll be proud every time you do." Years later, the war was only a memory. The alliance between humans and Athari had grown strong. In the Grand Hall of the United Planets Assembly, a young Athari ambassador stepped forward to speak before dozens of species. Her golden eyes shone with confidence. "Many years ago," she began, "I was only a child hiding in the ruins of war. A human found me and chose to protect me, even at the cost of his own life. That choice changed everything." She looked toward the audience where James Hale sat, now older, his hair streaked with gray but his posture still proud. "He taught me that life, any life, was worth protecting," she said. "And because of him, I stand here today as proof that peace is possible." The entire assembly stood and applauded. James felt a lump in his throat but smiled proudly. The little girl he once saved was now a leader, and the galaxy was safer because of her. When the applause faded, James stepped outside and looked up at the stars. "Not bad for a stubborn medic," he said to himself with a small laugh. For the first time in many years, the sky of Dareth 9 was clear, no longer filled with smoke or fire. James felt at peace. He had saved one life, and in doing so he had helped save many more.